Good? We're good. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City Commission Chambers. Tonight we're having a workshop, and that workshop will be headed by the Battle Creek Police Department, and they're going to be talking to us tonight about tasers and VR equipment. Let's go ahead and start out the meeting with a limited public comment. We have a 3-minute public comment period starting now, if there's anyone here from the public that would like to speak. I'm not seeing anybody, so we'll move on from there. Do you want me to turn it over to you, Rebecca, first?
Sure.
And then over to the PD?
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Okay,
Appreciate
you're
it.
welcome.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and Commissioners. Appreciate you being here for this workshop tonight. I just get the easy job to turn it over to Deputy Chief Gillian. Unfortunately, Chief Blacker cannot be with us this evening. He is on bereavement leave. So Deputy Chief Gillian is right here and can walk us through what they'd like to share with you in regards to considerations the police are doing in relation to tasers and VR goggles. So Deputy Chief.
Thank you. Commissioners, other city staff, thank you for being here today. I'd like to start out by sharing a story. Back in the early 2000s, before we had tasers, I was a patrol officer and I was working in the Verona area. We received a call at one of the gas stations about a gentleman that was selling drugs. Sure enough, when myself and my backup pulled up on scene, we discovered the gentleman and he dropped drugs out of his pocket. I went to arrest that gentleman and he resisted. Through the course of his resisting, my right arm was caught in his jacket and I ended up tearing a rotator cuff, which eventually needed surgery. This is why this program means so much to me. I really feel that if back then, if I would have had a taser, that taser would have given me an additional tool to deal with that situation, to render myself safe and to bring him into custody without additional use of force that may have been unnecessary. Currently, we are also dealing with a mental health crisis in this country that we're all aware of. This new system that we are looking at gives officers advantages in training through VR headsets, mental health crisis training. And I would say it's a very optimal system with robust options that you will get a chance to look at the end of the presentation. Lastly, I would like to say, in the past, we've purchased tasers a la carte. We are at the end of life with our tasers due to budget constraints that the city's more than well aware of over the last several years. We have not been able to upgrade our taser equipment. Tasers are made out of plastic. They're becoming brittle. They're out of warranty. We are seeking to start this program with your approval that we hope we get tonight in order to maintain a robust taser program that will allow updates electronically or wirelessly, with the newest, greatest, and most updated equipment. Today I have with me AXON, and they're going to present this, and I have Graham and Megan.
Can everybody hear me okay with my mask on? Okay. Thank you very much to the commission for having us out tonight. It's a pleasure to be able to come here. My name is Graham Gill. I am the TASER representative from AXON that has the privilege and pleasure of serving the Battle Creek Police Department as well as the city of Battle Creek at large. My colleague Megan, who you'll meet here in a moment, and I put together just a brief presentation for the commission to go through some of the highlights that Deputy Chief just spoke about. So from an agenda's perspective, what we were going to talk about tonight was an overview of the police department's current TASER program and why we're having this conversation. A brief overview of the newest TASER device that the department will be transitioning to if you so graciously approve them to do so. I'll then turn it over to Megan to talk specifically about the VR training that's now coupled with the TASER program, and then we'll open it up for some question and answer, as well as hopefully what everybody will take part in, some product demos where you guys can actually put the VR headsets on and try some of this out. So, DC, I don't know if you wanted to speak about this part. Okay. So,
Before we get started, I would like to share with you all a story. I don't know if you're familiar with the Walter Wallace incident that took place in Philadelphia. Basically, officers have responded 3 times to his residence that day. He was in a mental health crisis. His family knew that. They were used to dealing with him, and normally they have been able to calm him down to a peaceful point. Well, this particular day, the family struggled with Walter Wallace and calming him down. And I'd also like to back up and say that he has 8 children as well, and one of the children was due right around this time that this incident took place. At some point, Walter grabbed a knife, and the officers ended up having to use their firearm to shoot Mr. Wallace because they did not have other intermediate weapons, including a taser. So that's another reason, not just my story that I gave earlier, another reason why we like to talk about how important this TASER program is. It just gives our officers an additional tool to deal with situations like this.
So as an overview for the commission, as far as the historical relationship that the PD has had with TASER, which is now, we've rebranded into a company called AXON, they share about 19 of these devices across their patrol shifts. They're using technology that is about 11 years old. When we talk about the success rate of the use of these devices in the field, they're averaging around 70%. So there's room for improvement. When you think about that statistic, that means, almost half of the time, 30% of the time when these devices are being used in the field, they're ineffective and they're having to result to other uses of force, which oftentimes escalate the situation. So we'll talk about how we're going to solve for some of these challenges. We're in a position now where there's an aging inventory, and it's very difficult to actually de-escalate use of force scenarios with the devices that they currently have. And we have, with the newest device that they'll be going to, have built-in intermediary uses of the device to de-escalate situations so that it doesn't even have to be used at all and everybody has a mutually beneficial outcome. Here's just a quick overview of where the department's inventory is now. So as a level set for the commission, we recommend a 5-year useful life on these devices because, as the deputy chief alluded to, these are made out of plastic and components that are similar to a cell phone. It's not like a piece of hard equipment that you can throw in the trunk of a car and expect to be able to use for 10 years. So we recommend that these get serviced and replaced every 5 years. You can see that the majority of the inventory is well past that. None of the inventory, almost the entire inventory is out of warranty, and as we continue to age throughout the next couple of years, everything will be past the useful life and out of warranty. So the program is at a crossroads where we have an opportunity now to update to the safest and most effective TASER technology, as well as couple this with some very effective mental health crisis intervention training as well. So as a goal, when we were talking about this presentation, for AXON, the vendor, for the police department, for the city, we wanted to emphasize the fact that these tasers are designed to protect life, to protect the life of these officers, as well as to protect the lives of the citizens of Battle Creek. If you think about scenarios where we might all be familiar with where tasers are used, they're oftentimes the last line of defense between an officer going hands-on or having to resort to lethal force, like the deputy chief alluded to. And so as we think about the future of this TASER program, we want to take advantage of the opportunity that we have here to update this to the safest and most effective device that we've made in the 25 years of doing this in this business. And that device is called the TASER 7. And so this device has been researched over the last 10 years, 11 years since these guys have picked up the ones that they're on now, to provide better effectiveness and better training on these things. Again, the whole goal being to protect life, have mutually beneficial outcomes both for the PD as well as the community. So when we talk about effectiveness, there's 3 main reasons why the devices that they have now typically fail. It's misses and bounces with the probes on the current device when they're used. Clothing disconnects. So if you think about during the cold winter months, I live in Ohio, up here in Michigan, it's very similar. If people are wearing thick clothing, baggy clothing, Carhartts and North Face jackets, you can't use one of these devices on them because it's simply too thick and it won't be effective. And then close probe spreads. And what we mean by that is having a far enough spread between the probes in order to safely get what we call neuromuscular incapacitation to render the situation safe, allow these guys to go in, put somebody into custody without causing further injury or anything like that. And these 3 reasons are why we see departments like Battle Creek PD with about a 70% effective connection rate when they're using these things in the field. So what we've done is we've completely redesigned the weapon or the device to mitigate these reasons why tasers are ineffective, so that instead of 70%, we're seeing upwards of 90%. And the difference between 70 and 90% are situations where, like DC alluded to, the taser doesn't work and they have to go and put their hands on somebody and risk hurting themselves or hurting that individual, or heaven forbid, going up to the next use of force option, which would oftentimes in these scenarios be lethal force or the use of a firearm. So our whole goal is to make a safe device that is effective when it needs to be used so that we don't have to escalate to those scenarios. The next piece that we really focused on with this device is the training aspect of it. So the way that the police department has to purchase now, you can see on their current program, when they buy a taser, that's all they're getting. On this new contracted program model that we're proposing to you, not only do they get the taser device itself, but they get a myriad of different types of training that comes with it. They get to do scenario-based training, they get to do drill-based training, they get to do de-escalation training, and routinely do this throughout the year, both in service as well as other portions of time throughout the year in different what we call micro trainings that Megan will talk about, so that we don't have to just train to actually use this device. We can now train to de-escalate situations using the device by displaying it, by using strong verbal commands when coupled with a bright yellow taser that people can recognize and see, so that we don't even have to get to the point where we're pulling the trigger on the device and sending probes downrange. And we've seen throughout various studies where departments have tracked this information that oftentimes when they train on this model, the taser use about 86% of the time is just showing it and talking and getting through to somebody and de-escalating that scenario before you would ever even have to use it. Again, rounding back to the point of protecting life, to now we've got a mutually beneficial outcome where these guys can talk people out of a crisis scenario without having to use any force at all, which I think is what we would all want from a PD perspective as well as a community perspective. So some of the specifics on how we've done this training to de-escalate, all the tasers now are bright yellow so that they're easily distinguishable for both the officers as well as any community members that they're potentially interacting with in a scenario where they would have this. We have a built-in warning arc that's audio as well as a visual display. So another intermediary step before having to actually use this, brighter lasers on them, and then different types of probe configurations so that we've got 4 different steps in here before these things even have to be used on a call to service. So again, I would just leave you with thinking about the devices they have now. Over the last 11 years, we've had plenty of time to figure out how do we make these things safer, how do we make them more effective, and then ultimately, how do we couple this with good de-escalation training and scenario-based training for these guys so that they don't even have to use them in scenarios and they're able to use strong verbal commands to de-escalate this. So from a taser perspective, that's what I'll leave you with, and then I'll turn it over to Megan, who's going to talk with us about the VR training that comes with this program.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Is anyone opposed to me taking this off while I talk? Is that okay? Okay, thank you. First, I just want to start off by thanking you guys for your time. I know that the most precious thing that we can give is our time, and I just want to thank you guys for being here and hearing us out tonight. So, with that being said, I'm Megan McAteer. I work on AXON's virtual reality feed. I transitioned over to AXON early last year after almost 14 years in law enforcement myself. So I did 13 just outside of Detroit on the other side of the state here in Michigan, and then I did a year just outside of the Minneapolis metro in Minnesota. So I come with a heavy training background. I'm going to play a video here, but before I do want to give a warning. It can be a little tough to watch, and you'll see what I mean. So if anybody doesn't want to watch it, it's not tough as in gore, but it is hard to watch. So I'll just give that warning out. We lost our sound here. You don't know who.
It's on.
And Megan, when you resume, can you speak into the microphone so that people at home can hear you? We can hear you fine
Absolutely.
here, but I just want to make sure everybody that's watching remotely can hear you as well.
Thank you for the reminder.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
absolutely. There we go.
All right, let's stop, ma'am. I don't think you want to play it this way. Ma'am, please stop. You want to stop? Lights on, siren. Stop. You just left Walmart. Do you need to be arrested right now? No, no, no. Okay. Let's stop. Come on. Come on.
I'm going home.
No, 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 on the ground. Stay on the ground. On the ground. On the ground. On the ground. Bravo 242. After a short struggle, she is now detained. Come on. I am code 4.
Dad, I'm going
Hi.
home. I'm going home. I'm going
Quit!
home. I'm going
Quit!
home.
Are you finished?
I'm going home.
Hey, stand up. We're not going to hold you.
Alright, just go on the ground. On the ground. On the ground. Why are you doing this? Let me see if she is.
Really tough to watch, right? We like to think that things like this won't happen in our own backyard, and I'm not here to tell you what these guys did wrong. I'm not here to overanalyze that. We can all see that there is obvious indicators of mental health issues, and it wasn't handled appropriately. I think we can all agree on that. Law enforcement nationwide does a great job training for the big one, right? Our active shooter incidents, our critical incidents. But as far as what they're doing to train for mental health, there's a lot of limitations on that. There's a lot of limitations on how they train, time, cost, logistics. So what does that look like? There's a lot of classroom training, there's role play training, but it's really scattered throughout the year. And what are they really retaining on that? So with Officer Hop in Loveland, I'm not going to read this to you guys, I know you know how to read, but what I want you to think about is the ability to forecast a mutually beneficial outcome, not only for our officers, but for our citizens, right? With the training that we're giving them and that we provide, and that the support that we're giving them as a city can help ultimately give them the training they need for these calls. Mental health calls are pretty significant as far as call load, right? Our officers are training for the big one, but how often are they responding to incidents like that? Where mental health calls, they're responding to things like that every single day. So we need to do better. I think it's pretty obvious that officers and agencies want to train more, but an important point that I want you guys to focus on is that 90% of police departments think that training is a key to community trust. Not only building it, but maintaining it, right? They want to do better, but agencies are expected to do more with less. We give you guys a program with our virtual reality training program that's going to give them the ability to train more frequently, ongoing, and especially in things like mental health, communication, and de-escalation. This is giving them the tools they need that they're able to use throughout the shift. They don't have to logistically get everybody together in one spot or pay for them to go to training off-site. They're able to do this throughout the time that they're already on duty. It's really easy to use, and you can take it anywhere. Who in here has put on a virtual reality headset? Okay, a couple. So I want you guys to think back to your first time putting those on. And for those who have not worn a virtual reality headset, I want you to think back to the first time that you tried a new skill, right? We remember these things because it's creating a memory. Virtual reality has a way of tricking our brain and immersing us within the content so that we believe that we're establishing that memory so we can pull from it later on. Miami Children's Hospital did a study on virtual reality and retention. With traditional training methods like classroom, role play, telling people things, lecture, there's about a 20% retention rate after a week. With virtual reality training, there's about an 80% retention rate after a year, which is super powerful, especially when we're talking about training and having them retain the information so that we can have that mutually beneficial outcome. So what is AXON offering as far as our virtual reality training program? Your department's essentially going to get 3 products within the same package included in one. So on one hand, you're going to get our web-based training platform that the officers are able to do coursework on their own. Additionally, what we have here for you guys to try today is our community engagement training. Our community engagement training is designed to help our officers build empathy, to help them see things through the lens of a person in crisis or a victim. For example, schizophrenia. You actually start out the scenario seeing and hearing things through the lens of that schizophrenic person. These are heavily focused on mental health issues, and I will show you what modules we have out. After you've experienced things through the lens of that person in crisis, it's going to go back into the officer's point of view, and it's a branch style learning. So they're going to get selections that come up on the screen where the officers can select the best outcome, and it'll play through how potentially that scenario would play out based on that particular response. Now, we're also offering our simulator training that's going to be released here shortly. So with that, we actually use artificial intelligence to interact with the officers. They're not pre-recorded, where there's no real way to pre-record every single outcome. It's going to interact with the officers based on verbiage and tonality. Who's ever had a bad experience with a law enforcement officer? Be honest, it's okay. So it's not always about what they said, right? It's about how they said it. So what's key here is that we're actually training them based on how they're saying things. The artificial intelligence is going to interact with them based on how they're saying it, so that ultimately we can all be better and we can increase that public trust. How do people learn? We tell them, we show them, and we do. With our online learning platform, it's designed to tell. So we tell them through that learning platform, and then we're going to show them in our community engagement training where they see how things are done, how things should be done. And then ultimately, our simulator training is the do, where they're able to perform it and then take that out and implement it on the road. So how do we push out this content that we're giving you guys? I want to mention this is an ongoing partnership. Normally when you purchase a product, what you see is what you get, where we're committed to giving new content every single month so that we can keep this content fresh for the officers, and they can, throughout their contract, continue on getting that fresh library of modules. So our community engagement training, like I mentioned, is heavily focused on empathy, seeing things through the lens of the other person. There's still going to be a tactical element to it, but the majority of it is based on communication and de-escalation, which there's not a lot of training going on for that, not a lot of frequent and ongoing training like you're gonna get with this product. Additionally, it's gonna help our officers feel more prepared, especially our newer officers. Learning those communication skills are critical to building and establishing the community trust. And then lastly, officer coping. One thing that is important to me, I think we've done a better job nationwide talking about officer wellness and mental health. There's no lie, it's a stressful job, right? They see things that most people don't ever have to even hear about in their lifetime. So what this is it's normalizing having those difficult conversations because we want to get that stigma down. We want to reduce that stigma for somebody to say, hey, I need help, I'm not okay. It's okay to not be okay, right? But there's generally that stigma that goes along with it. What I would like to see is our officer suicides to get down below our line of duty deaths because right now it's higher than our line of duty deaths. This is an example of what the web-based training will look like. This is the tell portion of the training. And then this is what the community engagement training will look like. This is our suicidal ideation scenario. It's a suicidal man thinking about jumping off the rooftop of a building. When you start that scenario out, you actually see things through the suicidal man's lens and see things, you're looking out over the rooftop. Eventually, you'll go back into the officer's perspective and select an outcome and see how things should be done and how potentially that scenario would play out based on that proper response. I'm going to play through this video. Again, I'm just going to give a warning because it is about suicide before I push play here. We lost our sound again. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, we lost our sound again. Okay, so I'll just explain it. So you were seeing and hearing his thoughts about why he's suicidal, what led up to that. And then you're seeing things over the rooftop of a building. Now they've switched the view back into the officer's perspective, and you'll see here that branch style learning that I mentioned, where they're gonna select that option, and then it will play through how that response would potentially play out. This is the list of modules that we have out right now. A lot of important topics, right? And again, we are committed to pushing out a new module every single month. We partner with subject matter experts and mental health professionals on every single one of these during the scripting, during the filming, and then once the final product is done, it's vetted heavily to ensure that it's as realistic as possible. On our autism too, you'll see that just because we develop one module on one particular topic doesn't mean that we're one and done. We can certainly push out additional modules on the same topic if it's something that your officers are dealing with often. With our autism too, we actually had a female who is autistic as our actress. So I thought that was pretty cool because it really gives perspective, that true perspective of what she's dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So let's just briefly talk about our simulator training here. All of these scenarios are configurable, right? So the officers are able to change time of day, race, ethnicity. All of those things will be configurable to keep things dynamic in their scenarios. This is, what you're seeing here is our tablet. That's going to come along with it, where the instructor can watch what the trainee is seeing right on that tablet. It's going to record it and develop an after-action report, which is great. All of this is tracked within AXON Academy, which is that online learning platform that I mentioned before. What I like about this is it's helping to continue that transparency and police accountability with the training records within our AXON Academy platform. Who knows, I think I lost my mic here. Who knows how many TASER cartridges police officers generally shoot each year? Just go ahead and shout it out if you have a guess. Just guess.
25.
Okay, we have 25. What else? 10? 2.
Oh,
2 cartridges a year,
for us or nationwide?
nationwide. 2 cartridges a year to get certified on the TASER. That does not mean proficient. We all know that 2 cartridges a year does not mean that they're proficient with that tool, correct? So I'm going to play through this while I talk. What's really nice is you will get a TASER range using their exact same TASER tool in these headsets so that they're able to maintain their proficiency on these weapons. So they're able to get that practice throughout their shift, after roll call, throughout the year, so that they have that muscle memory. We all saw what happened in Minnesota. We do not want that ever to happen anywhere again, but especially not in our home, right? Not in our backyard. So what can we do to prevent that? We're giving them the tools that they need to train and maintain proficiency on these tools that we're giving them to de-escalate situations. So again, I'll just finish with, this is an ongoing partnership. We will give you new content each month, and we also welcome ideas. If there's things, and I've mentioned this to the chief and everybody over at the police department, if there's things that you guys are dealing with, that your officers are dealing with, that you want to see content on, we would love that feedback, because we always want to create content that's relevant. Okay, thank you guys for your time. Any questions? Yeah?
I have so many, but
Yeah, I love questions.
so I am curious on, if you could go back to the screen that showed the different options of the trainings that are available.
This one?
Yes, thank you. Are any of them about race?
Not race particularly, but we have been asked about that. We do have English as a second language, which will be a different culture.
Yeah.
But we do have different topics on that coming out because there's a need for it.
Well, definitely. I think that
Yeah.
racial bias is a significant one, and empathy is the way that we get through
Yes.
that. I'm also curious if I can, Vice Mayor, with a couple questions in a row. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
It's a workshop, so just,
Okay,
if
thank
you
you.
guys have questions, just
Um,
turn things.
I'm curious if there's baseline data gathered from the officers about where they start before the training begins and where they end up as it relates to empathy and...
Super interesting. We've actually been asked that too. Because it's so new, it's a brand new product, I do see that coming out. We just don't have it yet.
Okay.
But that is something that we are tracking.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. And then a question, this might be for the police department, but will this be mandatory, and how often, and when does it happen for new officers?
Yes, all our training is mandatory, and our new officers would probably start using this in the orientation phase.
Okay, thank you.
So, to your question, ma'am, so as it stands today, these are the modules that we have out now. What I would point out to your question, though, is that if you look, if you can see, I don't know if it's big enough for you, a lot of these scenarios deal with different genders and different races and different, people that are on different spectrums of mental health crisis and things like that. So while we don't have one today that specifically focuses on race, you will be dealing with people of different genders and ethnicity in these scenarios.
Yeah, I think it being explicit is important, because I think that we've seen enough of that, right, to know that that is at play, and I think that's probably the only way we're going to get through it. So if that's one that can be done, I'd be really, really pleased to see that.
Yeah, we appreciate that feedback.
Yeah.
I have a question. As far as the training is concerned, now, will this be a continuation, like maybe like a continue ed, like every 2 years, or how often, and will it stop at some point? How does that look?
Yep, it's a great question, ma'am. So for the contract that these guys are going to be proposing to you all, it's a 5-year contract where we add a new module every single month. and you don't lose any of the ones that you already have. So it'll be a continuation over a 5-year period, at the end of which they'll have a chance to decide whether or not they want to renew.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add real quick, a question came up about CIT training, how this will correlate to our CIT training. As you're aware, the police department is heavy right now on CIT training. I'm preparing to send some additional officers soon to go through the training as well. But the headsets, and this will give us the opportunity to change scenarios as the situation plays out. And it'll give the instructor a way to change the response of the person that the officer is dealing with based on that person's mental health as the scenario plays out. The situation can be played out smooth, or it can escalate and go back smooth, just based on the officer's response. So that is how this will also pair with our CIT training as well.
One other question I had, as far as the life expectancy of these tasers, what does that look like?
Graham?
Just for clarification, for the new ones or for
Yeah,
the?
no, I'm for the new ones.
Yeah, so same 5-year useful life expectancy. The good thing about this contract is that it's a 5-year term, so they'll be covered under 5-year useful life as well as warranty for any type of breaks or replacements over the duration of the contract.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morris, go ahead.
I was wondering where else is this technology being used at, and if some of those communities were comparable to Battle Creek.
Do you want to touch on that around here?
Yeah. So I believe last year, this is a new technology for us. I think we had up to 2,000 different agencies adopt this technology. So I cover our Midwest region, which is Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and Wisconsin. I've had agencies larger and the same size as Battle Creek, and cities larger and the same size as Battle Creek adopt this technology. So we're seeing really positive feedback from cities and PDs that are very similar to Battle Creek across the country.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Deputy Chief, I'm curious if you have a sense of how many or what percentage of our calls are mental health calls in Battle Creek?
I'm sorry, was that? I had a hard time hearing.
The percentage of mental health calls that make up our calls in Battle Creek?
I tell you what, it's increasing. I know that much. I don't have the exact numbers with me, but every day I watch our OpsCAD program as I sit at my desk going through my day, and it seems like every day there's a suicidal check subject, a domestic issue with someone with some sort of a mental crisis. It's becoming more common.
Okay.
If I can add to that, just last Friday alone, I remember thinking to myself about the amount of calls going out for suicidal subjects, and I thought, what is in the water today? There were so many of them. So
Okay.
it's fairly routine.
But we collect that information, you just don't have it handy, right? Is there, okay, thank you.
I had a question. How are, like, superiors keeping track of how folks are doing with the training? Like, say an officer is just messing up every scenario. Are you keeping track of that so that you can give supplemental training to them in other ways besides the VR equipment?
Yes, we sure will. We can track it through the tablet. We will also track this through our Power DMS system, which keeps an eye on all of our training to make sure everyone has equalized training and that they go through however many courses we set up for them. And then we'll have remedials as well. We can send officers to other training if we think that someone needs some additional help with dealing with certain situations. We can poise additional training for that officer as well.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we'll have a system in place to monitor people's progress through the training. Thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Sophia? I haven't heard from you. Mr. Blood?
As you look at the training, would you be looking at requiring the officers to complete training each month? I mean, so you get training on dealing with schizophrenic subjects, but then if you've got suicide prevention the next month, I mean, those are both very important.
Right. So I don't know if they explained that usually these training modules take 10 to 15 minutes.
Oh.
So unlike sending an officer off-site to go to a full day of training, you could literally pull 1 or 2 officers off the road, have them run through a scenario for 10 or 15 minutes, and you could run, if you have one team on day shift, you could literally run everybody through the entire week and continue that for weeks on end, and you would easily get through all the modules within a month or two.
So each officer would probably be trained in each module so that nothing, or as little as possible, falls through the cracks?
Yes, and
Okay.
then obviously you would move on to the actual training simulator where you could adjust the scenarios yourself, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just to touch on that too, they're never going to lose the content that is out right now. They're just going to continue to build that library out. So if they hire somebody 2 years from now, they're still going to be able to run them through every scenario that we've ever had released.
Commissioner Herring, do you have any questions? Commissioner Blood?
The only question I would have is, I apologize for my tardiness. I looked in here to see the actual presentation myself, to kind of scroll through it and make myself aware before coming in, and I didn't see it. Would we be able to have access to look at that presentation so I can catch myself up on anything I missed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have cards here as well I can leave with you. If you guys have questions later on, please feel free to reach out.
Commissioner Blood, that was sent in a link to all the commissioners. It's not actually an attached presentation. It's so big, and with videos, it's a link. So it's
Okay.
easy to miss. But so if you don't have it, or you can't, it doesn't work for you, let us know, and we'll make sure we send it
Absolutely, yeah. I was trying to pull it up because I can't see any of these monitors. So thank you. I will definitely do that.
I had one additional question. I know that just your job in general, you've talked about mental health amongst the officers, and you guys have to see and do a lot of really difficult things. We've also seen how just watching a video can be triggering for folks. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more. You said that there were modules to help officers with their own personal mental health.
Yeah, so you'll see our peer intervention 1, 2, and then we have a third one out now as well. So it's really just looking back. It's looking back from the partner's perspective and seeing your partner maybe being a little too handsy, wordy, right? And the duty to intervene, the duty to pull them back because maybe they're still spun up from a call that they just went to. Maybe they just went to a call where a baby died, right? And their wife just had a baby. So you could see how that would be triggering for them and their mental health. So that's what the peer intervention. And then we also just released an officer in crisis, which is about a suicidal officer and seeing things through the lens of a trainee. The suicidal officer is the trainer. So you're watching him go through it and seeing the signs that maybe we wouldn't necessarily pick up on, or if we did, we probably wouldn't say anything about it because there's that stigma. So what this is doing is just normalizing having those hard conversations when we notice that our partner is maybe going down that slope, whether it be with self-medicating with alcohol, or maybe they're going through a tough time with kids or a divorce, life, right? So it's just normalizing us picking up on those indicators and saying something before we don't have the opportunity to do so.
That led me to a follow-up question, if that's okay. So I understand this being utilized within the police department. Are there any other departments that you've utilized this type of technology, since first responders are, a great spectrum of organizations? Other than PD, have you used it in any other?
Yeah, so as far as just even to take it outside of law enforcement, the military has been using virtual reality training, surgeons, pilots, because they're professionals and they can't afford to make these mistakes when they're performing their duties. So as far as local, we have local, county, state, and even federal. We're also working out a corrections program as well. So we will also be entering the EMS and fire space eventually too.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have one follow-up question, Vice Mayor. And I'm just curious from the department's perspective, will this increase training and attention to specifically building empathy, also increase accountability within the, will it be embedded in performance reviews? Is there a measurement of how well an officer is doing, or what will the expectations be around accountability?
Well, first of all, we'll track all this in Power DMS, and we do expect, especially, I really like the portion where we talk about the duty to intervene, because that's a lot for an officer to come forward and say, I think my partner did something wrong. So we are hoping to track that. We should be able to track that with this program, and yes, that is something that we will be able to document.
Okay, thank you.
There is a spot in the online training platform for them to check off each officer completing each of these modules within their own accounts as well.
I just have one more question. I'm wondering how we can partner more with area mental health organizations, specifically Summit Point, who I know you've had ongoing work with, so that they might be able to review some of these modules and work with you in the development of future modules.
So I am on the Summit Point board. I'm also CIT trained, and I'm leading that program right now. So we are going to partner this with that CIT training. We are also looking to move forward with a program called Brain Health through the police department. That's a 3-year program that we're looking to adopt here in very short order.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, folks? I'm sorry, Commissioner Blood, I can't see. Anything on there? I think that we've covered everything then. Any final statements from staff?
Yep, I just want to add a few things in my conversations with Chief Blocker. I'm very glad that Deputy Chief Gillian mentioned the coordination with Brain Health, because that's, the commission has already approved that. They're working through what that implementation plan looks like. And I see that there could be information that's collected as part of this training that could be very helpful in that. We also wanted to make sure that you know that we have not brought forth this request to purchase this technology yet. We wanted the commissioners to have a chance to see it, ask questions. I know Chief Blocker would like to make sure that they're talking about it with community stakeholders and out in the community to gather that before it comes as a purchase request, but I know that they've done a lot of work with this company and feel it provides the best options for them as we walk through. I think virtual reality training is only going to get broader and bigger. You were asking Commissioner Blood about other departments. I actually just read something about housing inspectors and the housing inspection and code areas doing some training similar from a virtual reality perspective. And so I do know that this is kind of up and coming technology that I think we'll see more of, but wanted to make sure that Chief Blocker and Deputy Chief and team wanted to make sure they got in front of the commissioners early, so that any questions you ask, or if you're out in the community, you're talking about this, what are people telling you? What's the feedback about using this TASER and or the training?
That leads me to one more question, if I might, and this is a little off topic, but I'm curious if there's been any movement in your field in the space of personal protection. We had an incident with somebody who was a concealed weapon holder kill a patron at a bar recently, and I'm just curious if in those spaces where people are going to get firearms, if there is talk of what tasers could be for personal protection.
It's a really good question, and that's a team at AXON that we're very proud to support. We have an entire consumer line of products for personal defense of different types and sizes and everything like that. If anybody on the commission is interested, I would recommend that you just Google taser.com and it'll take you to the consumer products that we offer as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions? If not, we'll adjourn. All right, well, thank you all very much for coming out this evening and giving this very thorough presentation, and thank you officers for always looking out for us and looking to the future of training in your industry. Thank you. We'll go ahead and adjourn.
Deputy Chief, is there a chance for any of the commissioners to try on the VR headsets? Okay. So if any of you are interested in giving the VR a try, they have a couple of headsets you can use. It's a demonstration. Give it a try.
Never. Kristen, I can see your eyes light up.
She said, I never.
Hey.